You know, the interesting thing about that national heavyweight championship, I mean, that title really genuinely has been defended more than the other three titles. See, no one's in here. I'm just gonna end it. We're not even gonna save it. We're just shit, man. Come on. There's no point in saving that.
It's showtime.
It's the pre-party with Jay Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
The absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
What is up, ya beautiful people? No, that's Gary Horn's line. No, this is the pre-party with your host, Jay Cal. This is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. Guys, it's Tuesday. You know what that means? It means it's Prime Time Live. Woo, that feels good to say, brothers. and sisters, and other few sisters out there, that feels good to say. And I can't stress to you enough that I am jacked up for another week of Primetime Live. Mostly because we are getting some interesting matchups, but most importantly, the NWA National Heavyweight Championship is finally going to be defended. Now this match was slated to happen at the Crockett Cup 2020. But when everything came to a grinding halt, when the NWA ceased promoting live events and creating new wrestling content, that got pushed to the wayside. We lost out on the Crockett Cup tournament. We lost out on the World's Heavyweight Championship between Marty Scurll and Nick Aldis. I almost said Adam Pearce. Good God. And it was it kind of seemed like this match too would be scrapped, would be sent by the wayside. But the powers that be, the authority figures for the National Wrestling Alliance, the United Wrestling Network, put together this is the first match, guys. This is the first match that continues a storyline that was established in NWA Power and brought it to Primetime Live. That to me is exciting. What else are we gonna get from NWA Power to Primetime Live? What other synergy? What other an amalgamation of talent and storyline and matches are we gonna get where they split these two universes? Because up until now, this is almost like a separate entity, right? Because we had Nick Aldis come in and defend the 10 pounds of gold, and oddly enough, the previously dismissed insurance policy was there to be his backup in that match with the Miracle Mike Bennett and his wife Marie. That's something that had kind of ceased to exist in the NWA Power universe. It kind of felt like there was this divulging dichotomy between the two brands, that yes, they both recognize the NWA champions, but the continuity between the storylines seemed to have shifted. And I can further prove that this was happening because Eli Drake, who is one half of the NWA World Tag Team Champions, appeared on Primetime Live, sans the tag title, and no mention of him as a World Tag Team Champion, no mention of his partner James Storm, who we now know has recently been, well, let's just say that his contract expired. So it just felt like there was these two different things, these two different entities, if you will, these two different brands that represent the NWA. But now when we have Trevor Murdoch and the continuation of that angle, that storyline, that feud, that hatred, that animosity, that intense dislike for each other with Aaron Stevens, the shooter, the third-degree Mongrovian national champion. Well, I mean, now you're starting to bring it all, tie it back together. And I think it is super important for the continuity of the National Wrestling Alliance, as well as those who are watching at home, that you tie these two brands together. Because at some point, guys, at some point, there will be a return to form. We will have NWA Power back on YouTube. You can bet on it. I guarantee it. I mean, I don't have any inside knowledge, but, Nick Aldis was tweeting about it earlier this week, or was it last week? And the idea that something that was so successful in such a short amount of time, it did so much to help establish the current National Wrestling Alliance, to establish the talent, to establish the titles, to hell, make Thunder Rosa a household name in the world of professional wrestling. You have to think that they'd be stupid. Yeah, I said it. They'd be stupid not to reactivate NWA Power when it's getting safer and safer to do so. Now, we know we're still tied up by this COVID-19 pandemic, and political viewpoints aside, Florida has recently started opening up its restaurants, its venues, Disneyland, theme parks, all that good stuff. Disney World, excuse me. So we don't know how much longer these quarantine instructions will last throughout this country. We don't know how much longer it will be for wrestling shows to not be able to have an audience. I mean, Mission Pro Wrestling recently had their event, and they had a huge crowd, huge turnout for that show. So who knows? Maybe the Georgia Public Broadcasting Studios in Atlanta might be more inclined to open up and allow the NWA to start filming professional wrestling again in that studio. But until then, guys, until then, we still have Prime Time Live. Whew. Doesn't that feel good just to say? I get choked up, I get jacked up because I was there. I got to go to Primetime Live. You guys have been watching the pre-party with Jay Cal for a few weeks now. You know I was there. We did the guerrilla broadcast using my hotspot on my phone over here and got into the studio, and I literally sat down inches away from the ring, and we did our pre-party right there inside the Thunder Studios. It's a beautiful venue, by the way. If you guys ever get an opportunity, if they ever open that sucker up and do live events there with fans able to attend, I highly recommend it. It's a beautiful venue. But getting back to what I was saying, that national heavyweight championship will be defended tonight, and I think again, that continuation, the continuity from one era to the next, I think it's important, and it ties everything neatly and politely together, and honestly makes for a greater viewing experience. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm watching a movie and it has characters from one movie that doesn't connect with the other movie, or a television show, I mean, this happens a lot in comic book movies and things of that nature, I feel that immediate disconnect, and it's a bit of a turnoff for me. Maybe you're different, but in this situation, I really do feel like this is a great time, a great opportunity for the NWA, the United Wrestling Network, to get on the same page. And of course, what better way than Shooter Stevens and Trevor Murdoch? Last week on the Friday Hot Tag, when I went solo, I focused in on that matchup and talked a lot about what led up to this match. Of course, I mean, you guys who I forgot how to talk there for a minute. You guys who have been on this channel for a while have helped us grow and helped us reach our goals in terms of this podcast. You guys know who Aaron Stevens is. You know who Trevor Murdoch is. We don't need to give you a formal introduction, but if you want a reminder, I mean, these two were feuding over that National Heavyweight Championship for some time. In fact, Aaron Stevens and Trevor Murdoch became one of the secondary feuds from NWA Power. It's kind of started off when Aaron Stevens first entered NWA Power, and he had a losing streak against Ricky Starks. He lost the first match, and then he did 2 out of 3 falls. He lost 2 falls to Ricky Starks. Right around that time, the Question Mark started feuding. Not feuding, I wanted to change that. He had a match with Trevor Murdoch and beat him, and that was kind of a shock for a lot of us long-time NWA fans, because Trevor Murdoch had been such established with the NWA, going back to World Legion Wrestling with Harley Race and Gordon Soley, Dave Marquez, where Trevor Murdoch was an up-and-coming star for that show, and then transitioned to when Dave Marquez started promoting wrestling events under the NWA out here in Southern California, live television at the Columbia Square Studios, where they were shooting the NWA Pro Wrestling Showcase. Trevor Murdoch and his late partner Lance Cade both participated in those events. Trevor Murdoch became a traveling partner too with the NWA, as he kind of joined David Marquez's tours when they go to, all around North America, specifically like British Columbia, the shows that were in the Ohio State Fair, not the Adam Pearce Ohio State Fair match, but the ones before, and of course a lot of the shows in the Southwest. I kind of feel like maybe I might be going on and on about Trevor Murdoch, but again, to me, he's NWA through and through. He's been around for such a long time. He's even a part of Impact Wrestling. A lot of people don't know that he was bowed up in the early days of NWA TNA. As it would happen, Aaron Stevens would win that title. He would win the national championship at Into the Fire by some scrupulous tactics. He was dipping, dodging, diving both Colt Boom Boom Cabana, who was the champion, and Ricky Starks. even hid behind the Christmas tree for much of the show, much of the match, I should say, and it really kind of stole that title. Stevens then would defend that title again at the NWA Hard Times pay-per-view against Scott Steiner, which he lost the match, but only by disqualification. He kept the belt, so he was still intact as champion. Of course, that finally led to the match where Stevens wrestled against Sal Rinauro. Now, on the Alliance Guys podcast, we pointed out that Sal Rinauro is actually older than Aaron Stevens and has been wrestling longer than Aaron Stevens. And Stevens, Trevor Murdoch called him a young boy and all of that. But ultimately, the fun part was that's how they set up the angles. That Trevor Murdoch took exception to Aaron Stevens taking liberties with the young boy, and that led up to a match that went to a time limit draw. Trevor Murdoch post match would do a diving bulldog from the top rope onto Aaron Stevens, and pinning him. But of course, time limit was already up. Didn't win the title, but the fans counted anyways. As that match progressed, that feud started to progress. The question mark faced Trevor Murdoch, and Murdoch got a convincing win very quick, very early. Sorry, reading your guys' comments got me distracted. But then Aaron Stevens ended up attacking Trevor Murdoch after the match, and some of the most vicious, wicked crossface forearm shots to Trevor Murdoch, who was laying motionless in the ring. It was one of the most brutal acts I've seen in NWA Power, and definitely the most ferocious that Aaron Stevens has looked in his entire time with the NWA and that national championship. Now, this was all leading up to a feud at Crockett Cup that didn't take place because, of course, the Crockett Cup got suspended. We never got that matchup, which to me is a shame because, again, I really feel like that match at the time had a lot of heat to it and a lot of what I would say intensity surrounding it, and I kind of felt like there's been this cooling off period. No, that's not to say that Trevor Murdoch and Aaron Stevens can't get that back, especially in the first few minutes of this matchup. But I felt like there would have been a better payoff if that match could have happened at the Crockett Cup back in April. Now, as we look at this card for Primetime Live, guys, it is a stacked lineup. There, again, it's a lot of new faces, and oddly enough, for the first time, we see a couple of returning faces. So since the debut of Primetime Live, we really haven't seen a wrestler more than once. So Nick Aldis came in, defended against Miracle Mike Bennett. We haven't seen either one of them since. Last week we saw Thunder Rosa defend against Priscilla Kelly. We don't expect to see either of them anytime soon. And really, throughout that lineup, the challengers and the champions, of course, haven't been back on TV. But Eli Drake hasn't been on more than one episode. Watts, Martinson, Danny Limelight. But this week we get two return visits. We get the Dirty Daddy, Chris Dickenson, and we'll get more into it later. But I do want to give you some information on some of these new faces. Some of the new faces to not only the United Wrestling Network, but new faces for the NWA. And if you are new to the program, you might not be familiar with these faces. If you watch Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, a lot of these people, also Championship Wrestling from Arizona, a lot of these people you've seen before, but some of you haven't. So we'll start off with Cece Chanel. She used to be known as the Aussie Princess in the Women World. I messed it up already. The WOW. Is it Women of Wrestling? World of Wrestling? I can't remember the acronym now, but the WOW that was part of Jeannie Buss's wrestling promotion that used to air on Access. I do believe it's since been suspended or dropped altogether because Access is now owned by Anthem, which owns Impact Wrestling, so I think that's a wash. But she was known as Cece Chanel. She had been continuing her training in Southern California with the Santino Brothers Wrestling Academy. I mentioned them quite a bit because a lot of their talent appears on this show. We know that Brody King, who used to be former tag team champion with PCO, had come from this school. We know that Jake Atlas, who wrestles for NXT, was from this school. If you guys are familiar with MLW, Douglas James was from this school. We know that Heather Monroe, who's heavily featured on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, was part of the premiere episode of United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live. She also trained at the school. Well, Cece Chanel is another member of this long list of Santino brothers family tree, if you will. She's been training with the Santinos. She's made several appearances on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. However, she's yet to win a match. She made her debut in an elimination match with Heather Monroe, Lacey Ryan, and Sandra Moon. And like I said, she's yet to win a match. So it'll be interesting to see what's going on. And Lamb Sutton says Women of Wrestling. So thank you for pointing it out, Lamb. Women of Wrestling. Her opponent tonight, I consider her a personal friend. She's been on the podcast before in the past. She's known as the Equal Opportunity Ass Kicker. And what I mean by that is she wrestles men and women. She's an intergender wrestler. She's competed in Women of Wrestling like CC. She's a graduate of Santino's like CC. She's done a lot of wrestling in and about Southern California, but also has appeared on Wildcat Sports, which is the Luke Hawk wrestling promotion that's based out of Louisiana, New Orleans. And Raze is awesome. Seeing Raze in her element, she's actually a native. She's a regular. Let me start that over. She grew up. She lives in the city surrounding where Championship Wrestling from Hollywood tapes. It's the 805 area code. You'll see that usually adorned on her gear. She represents the 805. She is a tough lady, and she has a way of connecting with the audience. And I am going to show a little bit of my preference here, a little bit of my prejudice, I should say, because I'm a huge Raze fan. My oldest daughter, Lily, she's a huge Raze fan. She's got an 8x10 of Raze up in her room, autographed. We enjoy Raze. We think she's a great competitor, and I really can't wait to see what she's going to bring to the table tonight. She's had a few matches on Impact Wrestling. Like I said, she's appeared on Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. In fact, she was the first female to compete in the Red Carpet Rumble. In fact, she almost shared that honor with Vicky Guerrero, who was supposed to be a part of the Red Carpet Rumble, but lastly somehow at the last minute didn't make it actually in the Rumble. Raze did compete in that Red Carpet Rumble. Of course, she didn't win it, but she was a part of it, which was breaking ground for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. She also wrestled Kevin Condren on a non-televised live event for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. It was called Back to School, and the two had a feud. Oh, hey, we got a new follower. Well, thank you for following, Joseph. We appreciate that. I appreciate you joining us. And so Raze, again, kind of breaking ground, having the first intergender match in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. Don't get it twisted. She's awesome in the ring against women, but I mean, I've seen her have incredible matches with the likes of Willie Mack and with Bad Dude Tito of the Wolfsets. So I mean, she's extra tough. She knows her stuff. She's lately been training with B-Boy down in San Diego at the Next Level Up school. If you guys don't know who B-Boy is, he's an indie wrestling legend. Had great feuds all across the country. B-Boy is one of these. He's a legendary wrestler that just doesn't seem to die. I mean, he's an older guy, and I don't mean older like old, but I mean he's probably pushing 40, I think, and he's still putting on phenomenal matches. They have a wrestling school down in San Diego, and Raze has been doing a lot of training with him, and she's also taken up a surfing, so she's been active throughout all of this now. With that being said, the next matchup is another East Coast guy, a guy who I like quite a bit, and that's going to be the Greek god Papadon. Papadon is a guy that you're definitely going to enjoy. He was trained He was trained by Homicide. Eddie Kingston was trained by Homicide. Just to kind of throw that out there. Homicide has a great way of discovering talent, training talent. Before we go much further, I'm going to read some of your comments just so we're staying all on the same page here, because I see you guys have said quite a bit. Jonathan Burrell says, Jax Dane versus Tim Storm. Winner gets a shot at the national title belt, please. That would be tremendous. Jax Dane and Tim Storm definitely have a lot left in the tank. Would like to see more of them, especially in whether it be NWA Power or Primetime Live. Enjoy both of those guys. And again, I want to say hi to everyone who's here. Dave Scooby, thank you for being here. Woodland Goblin, Terry McDermott, of course, Jonathan Burrell. Dave Scooby says, Jay Cal, do you think a national title change takes place to show anything can happen? Primetime has had some great matches, but no title changes yet. So we're 3 episodes in to this universe, to this Primetime Live, and could there be a title change? I mean, 100% there could be. Let's look at things objectively, right? Aaron Stevens has done a lot for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood and Primetime Live. He does work behind the scenes. I don't know if he's trying to transition from in front of the camera in the ring work to, agent, producer, behind the scenes, or maybe if he's still trying to juggle both. But it would make sense that if he was trying to transition from active competition to more of a backstage role, that he would lose that title. We know that Trevor Murdoch is double tough. We know that Trevor Murdoch is, he's a great wrestler. I mean, both of these guys, I think, are very adequate to represent the NWA as national champion. Until Power starts running regularly, you're not going to see a lot of national title defenses. I think we'll see this one this month and maybe another one in November, if I'm just speculating, if I'm just guessing. It would be cool to see Trevor Murdoch win that title. In fact, I'm pulling for Trevor Murdoch to win that title. But I think for him to win the title would be amazing, but there's no guarantee in life. Woodland Goblin is supporting Trevor Murdoch just like me, so is Jonathan Burrell. Lamb points out that there's too many matches, and I kind of have to agree, where episode 1 had 7 matches and things felt rushed. The pacing wasn't good. And I'm being honest, I'll be critical of the show. My biggest problem was the pacing. I know the tech issues affected a lot of people, but if you went and watched the replay, they cleaned up those glitches, but you still had a lot of pacing issues. It feels like matches were rushed, specifically the World Championship match and the TV title match. It just felt rushed. And I think you could do without a lot of the other extra stuff that they had in that one. If you slimmed that down to 5, I think your pacing would have been better. You would have had longer time to tell a story with Mike Bennett and Nick Aldis. And we saw that last week when they did 5 matches, and we had a much better, I think, overall pacing in the show. Nothing felt really rushed, and the main event had plenty of time. I think anytime we have a World Championship match, they need that much time to tell the story. Terry McDermott says he would rather have too many matches than a lot of soap opera, and I see that too. I think the storytelling, we can have storytelling without having soap operas. We can have wrestling without a lot of drama. Now, of course, the storytelling, the promos, it's all part of it. And that's where I think United Wrestling Network and this episodic pay-per-view format is different than what you're getting with WWE, different than what you're getting with All Elite Wrestling, even different than what you're getting with Impact. There's less of the soap opera mentality, and I think that's why a lot of people are connecting with this show. Of course, if you've never ordered a Primetime Live, if you've never ordered it before, tonight would be a good night to. Single episodes go for $7.99. You can buy the 4-pack for $23.99, and that would get you episode 1 and 2. Of course, if you already paid for them, you're kind of stuck buying them by themselves at the $7.99 price. Okay, let's see. More. Woodland Goblin said he wants to see Viperous show up. I mean, I'm sure that could happen. Getting a match at Thunder Rosa, I don't know about that. It seems to me like the NWA is bringing in its own set of challengers for the world titles. So I mean, although Priscilla Kelly was great and Miracle Mike Bennett was great, I don't know that either one of them will be back with United Wrestling Network. And same way with Trevor Murdoch now challenging Aaron Stevens. Again, it feels like this is a match that was booked by the NWA, not necessarily by United Wrestling Network. But we'll see. I mean, anything, again, is possible. Terry McDermott brings up the upcoming NWA World Junior Heavyweight Championship podcast that we're going to be doing. I'll talk more about that towards the end of the show. But, yeah, real excited about that, too. So going through more and more of the show, and again, I appreciate you guys tuning in. This is a presentation of Alliance-Wrestling.com, your #1 source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance and the United Wrestling Network. So getting now to Papa Don. Real quick, I saw your comment, Jonathan. I have not heard anything yet, but I want to believe that they're going to do it again because I think they got a lot of early buys doing that 4-pack. But we'll have to wait and see. I'm not exactly sure. I think it's to their benefit because it's guaranteed money. I mean, the discount isn't a huge discount, but it certainly helps us as the consumer, and it certainly it commits to the program. So there's a benefit for Primetime Live because many of us bought that 4-pack without even seeing the first episode, and we just committed to the show. We committed to the pay-per-view. Of course, we knew Nick Aldis was going to defend the 10 pounds of gold, but we're instantly committed to Primetime Live for at least 4 episodes. So I think it makes sense if you're going to do that 4-pack again, you're instantly committing an audience that will be there, and some of the people who didn't take advantage the first time might be more inclined to take advantage the second time. And again, I think it's good. I think it's a smart business decision, but that's above my pay grade. I really don't know. So getting to Papa Don. I'm a big Papa Don guy. I've been watching Papa Don for years. If you're familiar with the NWA in the last couple of years, Papa Don is one of these guys who you always kind of felt might break through, might somehow steal a national title, might somehow get a North American title. Papa Don has wrestled for a myriad of promotions in the Northeast. I mean, that's his mainstay. That's where he's mostly known for. Wrestling for On Fire, wrestling for NWA Cyberspace, which used to be one of the top promotions during the TNA era, wrestling for Shockwave, which is what Cyberspace evolved into, wrestling for Dangerous Adrenaline Wrestling Gladiators when they were associated with the NWA, constantly having opportunities to wrestle for the national title, North American title, but getting this close and just never being able to pull the trigger. But he does have a propensity for capturing championships all across the Eastern Seaboard. He is a former NWA Cyberspace champion, and later that became the NWA Shockwave champion. And much like our beloved Eddie Kingston, he was trained by Homicide. I think it was interesting to note that early in his career, as well as early in pre-TNA Nick Aldis' career, Papa Don was in the UK touring several wrestling promotions and somehow managed to get married to Nick Aldis. And I don't mean married like husband and wife, but they ended up having many matches that were either directly in competition or teaming with each other. In fact, on back-to-back nights, Papa Don has victories against a very young Nick Aldis. In fact, on that same tour, Nick Aldis, teaming with Papa Don, had a victory over a young Marty Scurll, who teamed up with I believe it was the Cougar Kid. I think it was Cougar Kid. Anyways, Papa Don hasn't officially debuted for the United Wrestling Network yet, but has worked for a myriad of promotions that have been associated with the United Wrestling Network. Combat Zone Wrestling, New York, I think it's New York Wrestling Company. I think that's what it is, NYWC. And that was, and of course, NWA On Fire. Sorry about that. And of course, NWA On Fire. So Papa Don, again, super talented, has an eccentric look. It'll be fun to see what he brings to the table. And who knows, maybe down the road, he and a guy like Chris Dickenson can get it on. That'd be fun for me, seeing these two guys from the East Coast who really have been kind of coming into their own. coming to their own here at Primetime Live. Next up, we have Remy Marcel, and he's the man that will be challenging Papa Don. Now, Remy Marcel is one half of the Whirlwind Gentlemen. He used to team with Jack Manley, and they have captured titles all across the West Coast. Wrestling for Future Stars of Wrestling, the West Coast Wrestling Connection, even working for Paragon Pro Wrestling out of Las Vegas. The interesting thing about Remy Marcel is not only does he wrestle, but he also helps train talent. And he was one of the guys who was flown to China to help get talent ready for the Oriental Wrestling Entertainment, the promotion OWE. One of the few Americans who actually competed in China. In fact, when we were in China for the show in Wenzhou, the big United Wrestling Network show in Wenzhou, China, there were talks to try to get Remy Marcel there because there was a wrestler who had missed his flight, or didn't miss his flight, didn't have the right paperwork to enter the country, and so they were trying to bring in those guys to see if they could work something out. It never materialized. Chris Dickenson, again, you guys know who he is, but this, oddly enough, he's the first guy who, first set of guys. He's actually been on the first 2 episodes of Primetime Live. He was, of course, had that opening promo for the show on episode 1. Then came in and just brutalized, bullied, bludgeoned poor Jordan Cruz, Showtime Jordan Cruz. More like No Time Jordan Cruz after Chris Dickenson was done with him. The Dirty Daddy really put the boots to the kid and eventually got the victory. It was kind of I don't know. I felt that match went very long on that first episode, but it proved a point. It showed who Chris Dickenson was, what he's capable of doing, and he made a statement. Then the following week, he was in the backstage, did a promo right after the Jervis Cotton Belly match. A lot of people really didn't like the Friendship Farm versus the Real Money Brothers, and Dickinson pointed out, like he said, that's the kind of shit he's talking about. Really taking it to Cotton Belly. I don't know if there's going to be any repercussions. I don't know if Jervis will show up this week. I hope not. But Chris Dickinson should be there, or will be there. He will be defending. He will be in action. At least that's what they said. The next person I want to talk about is Nicole Savoy. Now, Nicole Savoy had the auspicious task of filling in for Serena Deeb. Now, a lot of us were excited to hear that Serena Deeb was going to debut in a match against the former NWA Women's Champion Allison Kay. That match seemed like it was going to be great. On paper, it was phenomenal. And then Serena Deeb gets announced that she signed with All Elite Wrestling, which is a great move for her, but really we didn't feel like that would impact her appearing on Primetime Live, and I don't think it did. But she did come out and say that she had been exposed to COVID-19, and as a precautionary tactic method, she decided to self-quarantine for the next 14 days, which would preclude her from joining the show tonight in Long Beach, California. Normally, I would say, man, that's such a bummer, because that match between her and Allison Kay would have been epic. We back-to-back matches of women wrestlers putting on some great shows. Last week, Thunder Rosa and Priscilla Kelly. This week, we were supposed to have Serena Deeb and Allison Kay. However, what a replacement. Nicole Savoy. Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with Nicole Savoy, I'm going to tell you, this is an upgrade. This is even better than the match we would have gotten with Serena Deeb. And I'm not trying to take anything away from Serena. I'm just that big on Nicole Savoy. I've seen her wrestle many times live. She's had a lot of matches out here in Southern California. Former AWS Women's Champion. She's currently the reigning and defending Pro Wrestling Revolution Women's Champion, a title she's held for a very long time. Now, I know that we're in COVID and she hasn't been defending that belt, but she has been wrestling all across the country. The things I want to point out about Miss Savoy is that she was a participant in the WWE's Mae Young Classic. In the tournament, she advanced in the first round, lost in the second round, being defeated by Candice LeRae, who, Candice Gargano. Like I said, she's no stranger to championships. She's a former pro wrestling, or she's currently the reigning Pro Wrestling Revolution Women's Champion. Now, Pro Wrestling Revolution used to be affiliated with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. I would still say there's a loose affiliation because I know Gabe Ramirez and Dave Marquez have talked about things with the United Wrestling Network in the past. I would not be surprised if we saw more talent from Pro Wrestling Revolution come down to Southern California and take part of these pay-per-view tapings. I do want to point out that Nicole Savoy was trained in all pro wrestling. If you guys remember the documentary Beyond the Mat that featured the Mick Foley Rock matchup, the whole thing with Bret Hart and the indie guys who were coming up, they were trained at APW. That's Roland Alexander, the late Roland Alexander's wrestling school. When I talked to Thunder Rosa on my podcast a couple months ago, she mentioned that she was supposed to go train at APW before Roland Alexander passed away. And Nicole Savoy was trained by Mike Modison, former NWA Heritage Champion, now Hollywood Heritage Champion, old school Oliver John. If you guys remember watching the early days of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, Oliver John feuded with Blue Demon Jr. over the NWA World's Heavyweight Championship, while he held the Pro Wrestling Revolution Championship and the Hollywood Heritage title. Definitely made him a great competitor and a great challenge for that title. So then the next match that I think a lot of us are interested in, and this is going to be in the semi-main event. I mean, I believe it's the semi-main event. The NWA might pull rank and pull that Nicole Savoy, Allison Kay match as a semi, but the Tag Team Championships, United Wrestling Network World Tag Team Champions, and I do want to put the emphasis on world. Tag Team Championships will be on the line. Now, I can say that those are world titles because I was there when they were defended on the other side of the country, the other side of the world, Guangzhou, China. Watts, who we saw last week, teamed up with Alex Chamberlain to challenge Impact Wrestling's Reno Scum, who then were the United Wrestling Network Tag Champions, thus officially creating that as a world tag team titles because the titles now have been defended around the world. The current tag team champions are social distancing. Now, if you're new to the United Wrestling Network, these two guys might not seem like much to you, but I'm telling you, you're going to become fans of these two guys. You might not like their attitudes, you might not like their underhanded tactics, but you're going to respect the hell out of these guys, much like you respected Kevin Martinson and Danny Limelight last week, because these guys will put it all on the line. They do a lot of hard-hitting, high-impact wrestling. In fact, up until recently, Andy Brown was one of the favorites in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood. He's a former Hollywood Heritage Champion. Adrian Quest, Young Fuego, also one of these guys who was just beloved in Hollywood. Now, Ray Rosas, who is the current Hollywood Heritage Champion and also the Arizona State Champion, somehow managed to corrupt these two and got them to form this gimmick, this stable called Static. And it was a very anti-social, we don't care about the fans, we don't care about the wrestling, we're just here to exist kind of thing. That was short-lived after the trio dominated Hollywood by capturing all the United Wrestling Network titles except for the TV Championship currently held by Dan Joseph, who we saw in episode 1. They came in fierce, but after Ray Rosas won the Hollywood Heritage Championship by defeating Watts, the duo of Andy Brown and Adrian Quest attacked their former leader under the supervision of a new leader that they're now calling themselves Social Distancing. And there's not a whole lot known about this new leader. I don't even know if he'll be here tonight on Primetime Live. But these two guys, again, very talented competitors. They've been teaming on and off since 2016. Made their debut in Hollywood through this auspicious Static group, now again called Social Distancing. And they're taking on the Real Money Brothers, who we saw last week defeat the likes of Jervis Cottonbelly and Sweet Robin Shaw. Now, you guys know from last week, they're hard-hitting guys, former tag team champions all across the West Coast. This should be a fun match. This should be an exciting match. It should be a hard-hitting match. And I really think it's going to be a good show. I've noticed, and it hasn't been officially stated, but I've noticed that the Rey Rosas defending his title has been kind of removed from advertisements. So I don't know if he will be there or not. But it was originally scheduled to be 7 matches. I don't know if that's now 6 or what's going to happen. But ultimately, I think if you're a fan of the NWA, if you're a fan of Primetime Live, this is going to be a good one. I really think this will be a good one. So, just going back over your comments. Lamb says that he thinks David Marquez responded to this question on Twitter, and he said it depends on Fight, and Fight will announce it soon if there's a bundle or not. So I guess we just wait. And then Woodland Goblin calls him SoCal distancing. I mean, you're not wrong. You really aren't wrong. I think ultimately, when it comes to Primetime Live, they really are putting out something different, something unique. And I know this has kind of become a hype show for the pay-per-view, but we are here to talk NWA, and we're here to talk about the hashtag NWA fam. So this is your time. If you guys have questions or comments or anything you want to talk about, please hit me up right here in the comments. We're broadcasting live, not only on Facebook, not only on YouTube, but also on Twitch. And it's been really cool. Again, I want to thank you, Joseph Pallarino, for joining us, following the Twitch feed. We appreciate you checking us out. Hope you enjoy what you're seeing, because we're going to be doing a lot more of it. So as I said, we're talking about the NWA. And one thing that's been missing, as far as I'm concerned, from the National Wrestling Alliance is a junior heavyweight division. I was very reluctant when the NWA announced that it was going to be bringing back the television title, because I thought that it would be more appropriate to introduce a junior heavyweight championship. And I was very critical of that. Now, Zicky Dice, Ricky Starks, a lot of exciting matches, and hopefully more excitement down the road. Dave Marquez even said that they're going to be bringing Zicky Dice and that TV title to Primetime Live. But I really feel like the NWA has been lacking that junior heavyweight division. We got a taste of it last week on Primetime Live. We got a taste of it. We got a taste of Danny Limelight and Kevin Martinson, formerly known as Johnny Goodtime. And to me, like, that's the epitome of what the junior heavyweight division can be. And as we posted on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, we will be doing a series of podcasts called Pound for Pound. Because everyone knows that the junior heavyweight division, pound for pound, is the best division around. Some of the best wrestlers came from the junior heavyweight division, and over the course of, about 60, I guess close to 70 years of wrestling, that junior heavyweight championship represented some of the best talents all across the globe. You know, there was times when that junior heavyweight championship was married to New Japan Pro Wrestling. It was part of the I believe it was called the Super 8 Championship, where Ultimo Dragon held 8 different junior heavyweight titles, the NWA Championship being included in that. And even before that, there was a rich history and tradition with that title, dating back to Danny Hodge and Freddie Blassie and Denny Brown, Hector Guerrero. I mean, there's a long list of names that we can get to, but we'll save that for the podcast. So I hope you guys will check that out as that comes down the pike. Woodland Goblin says that we know 5 matches, so we just know those 5 matches for tonight. Well, okay, so I didn't write this down, but we know we have the National Championship match. We know we have the Tag Team title match. Then we know we have Savoy and Kay. We know we have Chris Dickenson in some sort of capacity. We have Remy Marcel and Papadon. Tag match, or National Tag Women's match. Dickenson, Marcel, and Papadon. That's 5. And then the other match with Ruby Reyes and CC Chanel. So that's at least 6 matches. Now, originally it was advertised there was supposed to be Ray Rosas included on the card, but maybe that match got postponed. We know that he did appear on AEW's Dynamite show, or the YouTube show. He appeared on the YouTube show, taking on SoCal Uncensored with that Scorpio Sky, Frankie Kazarian. So maybe that match got pushed back. Maybe he just won't be appearing. Maybe he signed a contract with AEW. Or maybe he just got exposed to COVID. I really don't know. There hasn't been an official announcement. But Ray Rosas is a great talent. Hopefully he will make his debut soon for United Wrestling Network's Primetime Live. But it sounds like it won't be tonight. Terry McDermott says Danny Hodge was one of the greats. I mean, you got to put Danny Hodge right up there with Luke Benz. I mean, there I said it. Jonathan Burrell says, Danny Limelight was great last week. Do you think the Bodega will come to Primetime Live? If we have lost the NWA Tag Champs, it would be cool to have a tournament with the legit teams we have seen. Yes. I mean, I just watched the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood last week. I saw the Bodega team up. I think they are made for Primetime Live. The Boricuas, if you will, the Puerto Ricans. Danny Limelight's a star. I've had Danny Limelight on my podcast. I've known Danny Limelight for about 6 years now. Phenomenal athlete. Phenomenal. Or maybe 5 years. Maybe I overstated. But a phenomenal athlete. He's a former USMC drill instructor. He was training those boys to fight our country's battle. I mean, he served his time in the Marine Corps. He's left the Marines. He's into professional wrestling now. But he really has made an impact in such a short amount of time. And him and Pablo Esco. Pablo Esco was supposed to face Ray Rosas tonight, but again, it looks like that match got scrapped. So we'll see what happens. Again, speaking of Pro Wrestling Revolution, that's where Pablo Esco came from, was Pro Wrestling Revolution. So you know, see how I said that they have a loose affiliation with Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? I think you're going to see more talents from up in Northern California come down to Long Beach to be a part of this. Sorry guys, had to get some water. Getting really dry there. So yeah, I mean, when you have a women's champion like Thunder Rosa, who it really looks like the world is her oyster, you've got the 10 pounds of gold made its debut on Primetime Live. Now we have the National Heavyweight Championship appearing tonight. We've got Zicky Dice speculating that he will make his debut on Primetime Live very soon, maybe in the month of October. What about those tag titles? And to the point that Jonathan Burrell made, it'd be cool to see a tournament to crown a new tag team champions if it's true that James Storm is done with the NWA. And it's kind of hard to argue that. I mean, especially as he's saying that James Storm said that there was a deal in play for him to go to the WWE that I guess fell apart due to the pandemic. I don't know if that's posturing. I don't know if that's trying to get the ball moving for him. But anyway you look at it, James Storm was a great talent. It's going to be a loss if he is in fact done with the NWA. Royce Isaac recently asked for his release. Again, it's a loss. I don't want to say anything negative because both of those guys are super talented and meant a lot to the NWA for the time that they had. I mean, James Storm was a tag team champion. He is a current tag team champion. He's a former national champion and a perennial threat to Nick Aldis in the 10 pounds of gold. I mean, at any time they needed a viable challenge to challenge Nick Aldis, you could plug James Storm into that spot. And that's very valuable for a wrestling promotion that's young on talent and looking to grow. Royce Isaacs was a part of that tag team championship. Now, he didn't have as big a role on the show as James Storm, but certainly they were working on building something with him with Strictly Business and, of course, Mae Valentine and the whole relationship there. They were working to do something with Royce Isaacs. And, of course, all this got cut short because of not only COVID-19, but the restructuring that the NWA was forced to do with the loss of David Lagana as the vice president of operations. So of course, things are going to change, and that's okay, because you know what? When we were introduced to NWA Power, which I was in Atlanta 1 year ago today. That's how crazy this is. That's how fast time goes. I was in Atlanta 1 year ago today at the press conference ahead of the NWA Power TV tapings. Gary Horn was there. Adam Rotella was there. Dr. Robert Stinson was there. I'm sure some of you were there. Maybe I didn't get to meet you then. Hopefully down the road at some point we'll all be in Atlanta together again for another episode of NWA Power. But that's how weird this whole year has been. 1 year ago today, NWA Power kicked off. They taped their first shows. They taped their first shows a year ago today. And here we are 1 year later. We're not talking about NWA Power with the exception that we miss it. But we are talking about this pay-per-view, this episodic pay-per-view presented by the United Wrestling Network and David Marquez, featuring the talents of the NWA, and at least we have that. At least we've got that. And when NWA Power returns, because again, like I said at the beginning of the show, NWA Power will return, we're going to have a couple different options, because not only will we have our YouTube show that we get to enjoy, but we also have the pay-per-view show. And the storylines will be intertwined, they'll affect each other, and we'll see a lot of great build-up on both formats, on both programs. And in my personal opinion, I do believe that the NWA should bring back the 10 pounds of gold as well. The 10 pounds of gold in such a short amount of time really legitimized Mike Bennett as a threat, as a challenge to Nick Aldis, and I think 100% that the 10 pounds of gold should come back. Terry McDermott says people have to earn a living. Absolutely, and that's the thing. People do have to earn a living, and they are going to move on. I mean, Ken Anderson moved on, Colt Cabana moved on, Ricky Starks moved on. A lot of people moved on in this show from NWA Power before any of this happened. But the cool thing about it too is, I don't want to say it's infinite, but there is a vast array of talent that's unsigned, underutilized, unknown, that Billy Corgan and the powers that be for the NWA can discover. Nick Aldis last month defended the title against Nobi Bryant, a cat who used to wrestle for the NWA and wrestled in All Japan Pro Wrestling, a guy who would make an excellent addition to the NWA Pro roster. They brought Jack Stain in for 2 episodes of the NWA Power, and he would have been perfect from day one. And there's always going to be turnover in the big companies. All Elite Wrestling hasn't really experienced it yet, but there's going to be turnover from AEW to the WWE to Impact Wrestling to Ring of Honor to MLW. Talents will become available. And I believe when the time is right, when the iron is hot, that's when Billy Corgan will strike. And my boy, Dr. Robert Stinson, agrees with me. There's so much untapped potential. There's a lot of great talent out there. And we're not even talking international. We're just talking here in the United States. And there's hotbeds of wrestling. Southern California, the East Coast, the Southwest, the Southeast, Texas. There's like 6 different there's 6 different really good wrestling promotions in Texas right now. There's great wrestling happening in Tennessee. There's great wrestling happening in the East Coast. There's guys that you've never heard of that could make a difference for the NWA. Hell, you can even go back into the NWA. You can find guys like Chance Prophet, Damian Wayne, Dirty Money. These guys could come to the NWA and really bring some added value if that's how the ball turns. But as always, guys, we like to try to keep it to 60 minutes, and we're about that time. So I, again, want to say thank you very much for tuning in to the pre-party. We like to do this every week, Tuesdays at, I guess it's 5 o'clock Eastern, 2 o'clock Pacific, here on YouTube, Facebook, and we're also on Twitch TV. Of course, my brothers, come on after the pay-per-view, and that would be Dr. Rob Stinson, Will Martin, and Gary Horn. They do This Is the NWA podcast. They recap the pay-per-view, the Primetime Live. We kind of made this big sandwich where I give you this filler in the beginning, then we get the pay-per-view itself, that 90 minutes of action, and then you've got the good old boys coming in to close it out. We like to call that the hashtag NWA Tuesday. Also on Thursdays, the Alliance guys, me, DKM, and the former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Frazier, we give our take on what happened at Primetime Live, and we will try to go live this Thursday at I think we're going to try to go 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific. Of course, you guys want to check that out. Stay tuned to these channels. If you like this show, make sure you give it a thumbs up, subscribe, follow, all that good stuff. If you don't like it, well, leave me a comment. Tell me how we can get better, because ultimately we're trying to put this show on to help create this community with our NWA family. You guys are important. You guys have been with us through thick and thin, and we are trying to create this this time and place where there are no more gatekeepers. There is no more hidden information. What I know, I want you guys to know. What I enjoy, I want you guys to enjoy, and vice versa. I'm always open to hear new suggestions, new content that I should be checking out. And let's see, I'm looking. Okay, and then on Fridays, Will Martin and I do the hot tag on Instagram Live. You can check us out, and that's at 3 p.m. Eastern, noon Pacific. And of course, that goes on their YouTube channel. It goes on my podcasting, on my Spotify. You guys can check that out at the Alliance Blog. In fact, all my social media is at the Alliance Blog. And all we do all day, talk NWA. So the hashtag NWA fam, the hashtag talk NWA. If you guys are talking about the NWA, use those hashtags. If I'm not following you on social media, throw that hashtag talk NWA out there, and I'll make sure that I'm following you, subscribing to your content, because again, a rising seas lifts all ships, and I think we all have a place to create this wonderful world of camaraderie and community for the National Wrestling Alliance and its fans. So again, let's all get on board and let's all do something fun and positive to represent the brand that we enjoy so much. And I think that's going to do it for us. So again, check us out Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays, and the Junior Heavyweight Championship retrospective is coming soon. Look for Pound for Pound, the hashtag Pound for Pound, because that's where we're going to do our talk. Again, it's going to be about 7 or 8 episodes, maybe more if a few interviews line up the right way. But that's going to do it for now. Guys, if you haven't ordered it yet, get on it. Go to Fight TV and order this pay-per-view. I'm Jay Cal. You guys are awesome. I'll see you at the matches. And that's a good night now. There it is.